I saw a beautiful woman reflected in the mirror. Her soft silver curls flowed like waves in the ocean, and her purple eyes sparkled like amethysts. She looked quite beautiful, but at the same time her eyes exuded a sharp, ruthless aura. She seemed to give the impression of a beautiful but poisonous flower. Quite a face for a villain. The woman's lips were as red as blood, and they opened to ask a question in a low voice. Mirror, 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 answer me, who is the prettiest and sweetest? The surface of the mirror rippled, as if someone had thrown a pebble into the water. In the blink of an eye, the woman's face disappeared from the mirror to reflect that of a young girl. The most beautiful of all is Princess Blanche Friedkin, Your Majesty Abigail. I stared in amazement at the mirror. From the frightened expression on her face, the girl in the mirror must have sensed me looking at her. Blanche. I walked over to the mirror, letting the name Blanche roll off my lips. Princess Blanche Friedkin, a young girl who had just turned 11 this year. Just as the mirror said, the girl was truly beautiful. Her black, thick hair resembled the majestic midnight sky. On her skin, white as snow, not a single speck could be found. Her rabbit-like eyes were very pretty, and her soft, plump cheeks practically begged to be squeezed. At her current age, she was pretty rather than pretty. She was destined to break untold numbers of men's hearts when she matured. Just as I thought. Knock. I pounded my fist into the wall in front of me as hard as I could. Knock. Knock. The more I swung my fists, the more thrilled I became. Just as I thought, Blanche. Just as I thought, Blanche, the sweetest and most beautiful thing in the world. Once again, I couldn't contain my love for Blanche. Even with her doll face, she manages to look regal and charming at the same time. The mirror showed Blanche, with tears in her eyes, talking to her babysitter. A cute little girl who combined the cuteness of a rabbit and a puppy. If she lived in the 21st century, she would easily be a child star capable of captivating the hearts of millions. I just can't get over how adorable she is. I ended up hitting the wall a few more times in an effort to blow off steam. After some more time, I finally managed to calm down. And even though my fists were all bloody, it didn't matter. Phew, Blanche is just super duper cute today. Thinking about this adorable little girl being my daughter, I just couldn't believe it. Technically, she wasn't my real daughter, but I didn't care that there was no blood connection between us. I had gotten my hands on this beautiful child about a month ago. When I died and then opened my eyes again, I somehow found myself in Snow White's world. Asterisk 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 my name is Baekap Lee, an ordinary, unremarkable woman in her 30s. I worked overtime like everyone else. I was concerned about my appearance like everyone else, and I was concerned about my weight like everyone else. Just hearing my name, most people would assume I was a pale, frail girl like Lily, after whom I was named. In my case, however, reality just couldn't get any further away from the truth. Dark-skinned, short, plump, but with an appealing personality. No, who am I kidding? I was ugly, like all demons from hell. I was a mediocre, ugly woman. My looks eventually gave me a lot of trouble in the past, but I managed to live a happy life, and it was all thanks to my work. When I got my design degree, I got a job at a children's clothing company. I designed clothes and saw them arrive on store shelves. It gave me unparalleled pleasure, but I must have been working too hard. After several years of continuous work and constant overwork, I eventually died. It was probably because I tried to go on a diet despite being overworked. Oh, I should have just picked one thing. Anyway, I died and opened my eyes in this body. A beautiful, charming, but poisonous lady. Snow White's stepmother, who was dying of envy. Me, Abigail Friedkin. Even my face looked really scary. If I looked even a little nicer, maybe Blanche would treat me a little better. I caught a glimpse of Blanche, now sitting on the other side of the table. We were having a happy time, a little tea party. I opened my mouth, turning kindly to Blanche, trying to help the girl. Try to relax a little bit, princess. Why yes, Lady Abigail. Blanche's face turned quite pale. She couldn't even look me in the eye. Her cup was shaking in her little hands so hard that I wondered how she managed to keep all the tea in that cup without spilling it. Sigh, I just wanted to have a nice time over a cup of tea with Blanche. The whole time of the tea party, there was a monstrous silence. Finally, Blanche raised her eyes from her cup to look at me. Her huge, blue eyes seemed extremely innocent, like a little puppy dog. Her eyes seemed to ask, "Are you mad at me?" Oh, too cute. I couldn't keep myself from smiling. Although, when I made a caring, sweet mommy face, Blanche's expression changed. Her puppy dog eyes turned immediately into the look of a frightened rabbit. Both of her eyes opened even wider. Did I do something wrong? Come to think of it, Abigail's smiling face was really scary. I was surprised the last time I smiled in front of the mirror. What I saw on my face then was more like a bloodthirsty smile. A smile that could literally kill. No, it's okay. I put my poker face back on and pretended to drink my tea. Blanche seemed to calm down a little. Just a little bit. The girl put her 2 palms around the cup and sipped her tea slowly. She still cast the occasional frightened look at me. I scared the crap out of Blanche. It was so obvious that I couldn't help but feel annoyed. How I want to touch her beautiful hair. It would be so great if I could braid it up a bit. Then add some suspenders and also a blouse with ruffles and she would turn into perfection itself. Perhaps a nautical theme to match her blue eyes. A white sailor suit with a little blue ribbon. My right hand began to twitch in anticipation. Oh my gosh, I really want to create something for her. Every time I see Blanche, I feel my creative spark burst into a mad flame. I want it to work, even though before, it ruined me. I'm a real weirdo, aren't I? It would be wonderful if Blanche could wear the clothes I designed. Well, I could make Blanche wear them, but I'm afraid she'd take it as harassment. That's when I heard Blanche's voice. Lady Abigail. I immediately returned to reality. Blanche seemed to choose her next words very carefully. Do you need me today? Did I do something wrong? No, I really just wanted to have tea with you. Blanche still seemed to be shackled by fear. Well, it wasn't surprising, really, considering the way Abigail had treated her in the past. Abigail really had been a bitch. Being the most beautiful woman in the world was above everything to her. She chased away any maids or servants she thought were even remotely beautiful. The women who remained in the castle, she mocked, burdened them with hard work and punished them constantly. Blanche, naturally, was no exception. Abigail could not abuse the girl as well as the maids, but she could still torment her in many other ways. For example, by ferreting out all Blanche's faults. Or by spreading sordid rumors about her. Or tearing up, one by one, all her dresses. Millimeter, this girl has more than enough reason to be shaking with fear in front of me. I organized this tea party because I wanted to get close to Blanche, but I only frightened her more. Oh my God. How could I atone for my sins and get closer to Blanche? I took a sip of tea, racing the thought through my head. And the tea managed to go down the wrong throat. Cough, cough. Gar. Pain. Blanche's round eyes got even more round when she saw me tearing up with a cough. She handed me a towel, looking rather embarrassed and not knowing what she should do. Are you all right? Are you in pain? I waved my arms, trying to tell her that I was okay. I felt guilty, seeing Blanche's worried face. To think, girl, still worried about me, even despite how badly Abigail had treated her. Too kind, she was just too kind. I somehow managed to interrupt my incessant coughing in time to speak a few words. We're fine. I'm fine. Are you still not feeling well? Blanche, she looked upset. Why was she looking at me like that? Maybe that's what this is all about. To tell you the truth, the way Backup died, so did Abigail. When I woke up, it was in the middle of Abigail's funeral. I was lying in the coffin, almost panting, under all the lilies that surrounded me. When I got up and looked around in confusion, all I could see were the shocked faces of the strangers piled around me in the huge room. I remember making a scene, trying to find out where I was and why I looked like this. The imperial doctor diagnosed me as having a mental disorder as a result of surviving clinical death. Could that be why my memories of Abigail were so faint? I had memories of Abigail's past, but they were all bits and pieces. Fortunately, I had all the knowledge I needed to live as a queen. After dealing with the situation, I did my best to live up to my status. However, one problem remained. At the end of this story, I would have to give Blanche a poisoned apple. Then I would be forced to put on red-hot metal shoes and dance around in them like a madwoman until I crashed to the ground, dead. I can't die like that. If I want to avoid dying like that, the first thing I have to do is improve my relationship with Blanche. I looked at Blanche calmly. I did my best to make my voice sound as soft as possible, while at the same time trying not to smile. I'm fine. Thank you for your concern. Anyway, Blanche. Why yes. I want to ask your forgiveness for everything I've done to you. Blanche's eyes went wide when she heard this. I want to apologize to you for all the misfortune I have caused you in the past. I am very sorry for that. The death I experienced has made me reevaluate my actions. Blanche had a strange expression on her face. She seemed very surprised, considering all she could do was blink a few times. I realized that all my past transgressions will not disappear with a simple apology. Nevertheless, I ask your forgiveness. Blanche didn't say anything for a while. I lowered my gaze, waiting for her answer. I could see the reflection of Abigail's face in my cup of tea. She looked like an angry cat, but she was beautiful nonetheless. She had nothing in common with the past me. A charming, snake-like body. Beautiful, almost fantastic silver hair and violet eyes. She was 170 centimeters tall, a beautiful, trim body, and skin as smooth as porcelain. I became so beautiful that I spent the whole day after my first appearance in this world admiring myself in the mirror. Why did she hate beautiful women so much when she herself was so beautiful? And to think that she was trying to hurt such a beautiful child. I looked at Blanche for a moment. Her pensive expression looked so cute and appealing, like a hamster's. I really want to touch her cheeks, just once. Abigail is pretty, of course, but I like Blanche better. She's cute. The most powerful force is sweetness. How sweet she is. She gives my whole body goosebumps. Cute. I wanted to improve my relationship with Blanche. But to do that, I first had to atone for Abigail's past sins. As if to prove it, Blanche did not accept my apology. She just kept glancing at me intermittently, with a very confused expression on her face. It's not that I didn't understand. And I didn't think she would accept my apology, just like that. But anyway, at least I apologized. But, as they say, deeds speak louder than words, so it was time to focus on that. Probably the right move for me, now, would be to let the girl go. She's probably too nervous to stay here with me any longer. I must have surprised you. Forgive me, Blanche. You can go get some rest. Yes, of course. Lost somewhere in her thoughts, Blanche finally recovered enough to stand up. But just as she was about to leave the room after saying goodbye, Blanche bumped into someone entering the room and fell to the floor as a result. Blanche! I exclaimed in surprise. I wanted to go over and help her up, but I had to stop myself when I saw the man she was facing. He had black hair, just like Blanche's, and he looked so young, like he was in his early 20s. When I first saw him, I was reminded of a picture from an exhibition I had visited at some point in my life. A black leopard. I remember fixating on that leopard, on its regal and velvety coat, on that proud and commanding aura that radiated from the wretched drawing. I could not take my gaze away from his eyes, in spite of the fear they aroused in me, and I ended up spending quite a bit of time like that. I was completely fascinated by this beast. The man standing in front of me now resembled this leopard very much. Handsome, charming, and majestic by nature. Even that little mole next to his right eye made him look even more charming than he already was. Any other woman would have blushed when faced with such a man, but when I saw him, I could barely restrain myself from throwing a few insults in his face. This man is the king, Blanche's father, and also my husband, Sabalion Friedkin. A man who is my sworn enemy. The servants and maids all bowed deeply at his appearance. I should have greeted him properly as well, but there was something more important that I should have taken care of first. Are you in any pain, Blanche? I quickly helped Blanche to her feet, listening to Sabellion's voice behind me. She lacks awareness of her surroundings. Before I could say a word, his icy voice cut me off. Sabalion regarded his daughter as something completely unfamiliar to him. His gaze was indifferent, devoid of compassion or concern. I didn't understand how a father could look at his own child that way, especially a child as beautiful as Blanche. But Blanche didn't even cry. She coolly fixed her hair, and then properly greeted the king. I apologize, father. I'm sorry you had to witness what happened, Lady Abigail. Wait, why are you apologizing? All you did was fall. And it was at that moment that I noticed that something was wrong. Blanche, are you all right? I took her right hand gently in my hands, which made the girl wince in pain. That's what I was afraid of. No wonder she was so careful with her right hand. She must have hurt herself when she fell. You hurt your wrist. I'm fine. Really, I'm fine. Blanche quickly hid her right hand from me, acting as if she had been caught doing something wrong. Her gaze, full of fear, focused on Sabellion. Seeing Blanche's anguish hurt me from the inside out. She didn't even cry after she fell. Sabalion opened his mouth, and said in the same cold tone, I'll send a doctor to you. You can go now, Blanche. I have something to discuss with Abigail. Yes, father. Bowing one last time to Sabalion, Blanche quickly ran off, just like a little rabbit. My eyes, like daggers, dug into Sabellion. Weren't you too cruel? Regarding what? Your daughter got hurt. You couldn't even bring yourself to say a word of comfort. With a mocking sneer, Sabalion slowly tilted his head, his gaze almost piercing me. That's ridiculous. Since when do you care so much about Blanche? I had nothing to say to his words. After all, until recently, no one had clung to Blanche more than I had. In my case, defending the girl looked like the world had turned upside down. My views have changed since I parted ways with death. Is that so? The look on his face indicated that he didn't believe me at all. Come on, it makes sense to have a little change of heart after a near-death experience, doesn't it? Sabalion slowly walked over to the table and took the seat that Blanche had vacated. The maids fussed and placed a new cup of tea in front of him. He nodded his head and motioned for me to sit back down. Don't treat me like a goddamn pet. I gritted my teeth hard as I took my seat, looking right at him, like right now. He's a piece of trash, but damn if he wasn't so handsome. Perhaps you've hurt yourself, too. You don't look healthy. The tea is a little hot, that's all. Using this worthless excuse, I forced myself to look away. Oh, how I hated that. To think that drinking tea with such a handsome man could be so unbearable. Reality is actually stranger than any fiction. In many ways, Sabalion was perfect. He was a handsome king, praised for his wisdom and martial prowess. And for all that, he was one huge bloody problem. His heart was as ruthless as the desert, and the blood flowing through his veins was as cold as ice. The first thing I saw when I woke up in my coffin was the face of Sabalion, who leaned over me and spoke his farewell words to me. May such misfortune never befall us, to meet again in the next life, Abigail. The moment I heard those words, several memories flooded back into me, causing me to jump out of my coffin like a stung person. Normally, during a wedding ceremony, husband and wife kiss, as if to affirm their vows of eternal fidelity. But Abigail and Sabalion did not kiss. Worse, they didn't even share their first dance at the wedding reception. Sabalion left, apologizing and citing that he was too tired. And on their first wedding night, Sabalion, he didn't even lay a finger on Abigail. He simply said, "Abigail, know this, I will never touch you." For no particular reason, he just turned away and fell asleep, leaving Abigail only to blink stupidly in bewilderment. They never even held hands. Through it all, Abigail's pride was absolutely destroyed. Overwhelmed by his actions, at first, she tried to act as cold to him as he did to her. But time passed, and as time passed, her desire to be noticed only grew in her. Finally, she became so desperate that she began to beg him, so eager was she to win his love. "Your Majesty, why do you always keep me at arm's length? What must I do to deserve your love? Don't come near me. Better yet, if you pretend as if you don't exist at all. No, if you really want to please me, act as if you were dead. Only then will your role be perfect." Her thoughts flitted around in circles, wondering why Sabalion rejected her to such an extent. After all this pondering, she came to the only logical conclusion from her point of view: she was not beautiful enough for him. Her character had been bad enough to begin with, but after passing such a judgment on herself, she had fallen almost into madness. Since then, everyone who was even remotely good-looking, in the palace, has been kicked out. Even Blanche's misery began at that very moment. There is no denying that Abigail was a terrible person. I could not and would not defend her actions, but at least I could understand her feelings as a woman. A political marriage between two countries, arranged for the benefit of both sides, but not in the name of love. But even among arranged marriages, hers was especially sad. Sabalion, that bastard. How could he treat girls like that? Why get married at all? Just thinking about it made me furious. I took a big gulp of cold water to cool down. I didn't have to say it, but I wasn't too happy that Sabalion had decided to grace me with his visit today. And what reason could he have for coming here? Definitely nothing good to look forward to. "Your Majesty, may I inquire as to the purpose of your visit? I wish to talk to you about your death." Death. I flinched a little when I heard the word. I put the cup down and looked at him. "My death, yes. You were lucky to survive, but for a while, you were definitely dead. So I was looking for reasons for what happened." My ears perked up at his words. The end of this tale bothered me as much as Abigail's death did. I'd heard that her death looked like she'd just fallen asleep and never woke up. She was only 23, not the age when you expect someone to pass away suddenly. Nor was she sick. From this, the most likely development of events loomed: murder. I felt a chill just thinking about it. I may have died once before, but death by overwork is completely different from outright murder. Sabalion continued his monotonous monologue, as if he were reading a passage from a book. Poison seems to be the most likely option. If we had the opportunity to dissect you, we would know for sure, however. Hey, could you not look at me like that when you talk about my dismemberment? I conducted an investigation concerning all the servants close to you, but no evidence of attempted murder could be found. What a pity. So the man who tried to kill me is still somewhere in the palace. That's just great. I felt a chill run down my spine. Unlike me, Sabalion remained as indifferent as ever. Before continuing, he slowly took a sip of tea. Do you remember anything about your death? The investigation will be over much faster with this information. As much as I wanted to do something to help, all I could do was shake my head. Unfortunately, there's nothing I can do to help. Abigail's memories consisted of many parts and pieces. Some of them were crystal clear, while others were completely absent. When Sabalion heard my answer, he raised his head and looked at me calmly before he spoke. You don't remember about that accidental event? That event? 6 months ago, when you drank the poison. 6 months ago. I flipped through the few memories I had. Yeah. Oh, I remember. I drank the poison, but... You mean the time when I poisoned myself? Right. Abigail deliberately poisoned herself. It was a brilliant plan she devised to get Sabalion's much coveted attention. While she was bedridden, Sabalion, indeed, paid her a visit. Despite her initial jubilation, soon, Abigail fell back into despondency when Sabalion learned the truth, and began to treat her even worse than before. He nodded and looked at me again, his piercing gaze trying to take me apart thoroughly. You, again, wanted my attention, didn't you, Abigail? My jaw almost dropped to the floor. I was incredibly surprised. Excuse me. Does he seriously think that Abigail tried to kill herself? I couldn't deny that Abigail had done some crazy things in the past to draw attention to herself, but to be suspected, right away, was too much. Yes, she had faked being sick in the past. She tried to drown herself. And yes, she drank poison, but... Yes, it's perfectly understandable that I came to that conclusion, too. Even I was beginning to suspect her. Why the hell should I have to clean up the consequences of the actions Abigail had left in her wake? Despite my irritation, I restrained my anger, not wanting it to affect my efforts to improve my future. I admit, I'm guilty of a couple of creative tricks to get your attention. A couple. A few. Several. But this time, it wasn't like that. I did my best to keep my composure. Nevertheless, this man's eyes showed extreme doubt about my sincerity. Regardless of your tricks, I will not be able to give you the love you desire. I wanted to pour cold water on his stupid face. In that case, it's okay, since I don't desire your love. It wasn't a joke or a mockery, I was absolutely serious. I wanted nothing more to do with a man who behaved like that. But the aura of suspicion, Sabalion, remained the same. I spoke again with complete honesty. After my near-death experience, I finally realized how useless it all was. No matter how hard I tried to draw your attention to myself, all you gave me in return was pity. I don't want your pity. Just as Sabalion felt nothing for me, I also felt nothing for him. I admit that at first I was attracted to his face, his looks, but his personality immediately ruined everything. You may be suspicious of me, but I swear to you, on the honor of my family, I have not uttered a single lie. I seem to remember that last time you swore on your family's honor, too. Damn it, Abigail. Would you mind not lying? It took me a moment to gather my thoughts and choose my next words carefully. In that case, if I were really using this situation to get your attention one more time, wouldn't I immediately blame one of the maids for my poisoning? The real Abigail would have done that for sure, I'm 100% sure. She would have picked a rather pretty maid and killed the poor girl's entire family for a false crime. Nevertheless, I told you that I knew nothing about who committed the crime, knowing full well that the suspicion, soon, would pass to me. If I had accused someone else from the beginning, the situation would have changed in my favor. Sabalion said nothing, and his suspicion did not dissipate. The mistrust we harbored toward each other did not diminish in the slightest. I completely understand your hesitation. Trusting my words is hard. But, I guarantee that you will see their truthfulness from now on. In fact, I now have the desire to begin to atone for my past transgressions. Wish. Why not? I showed the kindest smile I could muster on my current face. I have a suggestion. How about we sleep in separate rooms? I could see Sabalion's eyes widen slightly. It was almost like the moment I came back to life after death. Separate rooms. Yes. Separate rooms. I spoke slowly and clearly, to make the meaning of my words clear. Though I said it as if the suggestion was for Sibelian's benefit, it was as good for me as it was for him. Nowadays, Sabalion and I share a bed together. It made me uncomfortable, to say the least. I wanted to sleep soundly, but I couldn't, lying next to someone I didn't even know. After all, he was a stranger to me. We might have been a couple on the outside, but inside, we were nothing more than acquaintances. Sharing a bed with a man I don't know. Every night, I suffered from sleep deprivation caused by stress, and it made me sick. So, my brilliant solution: separate bedrooms. I would be happy, he would be happy. And on the other hand, it might improve his opinion of me. He still looked skeptical. After a pause that seemed like an eternity, he finally managed to nod. Okay, I'll take care of that later. Wonderful. Oh, and one more thing, there's something I'd like to ask you. Ask. Oh, he could misunderstand me, couldn't he? I quickly explained before he could fantasize strange ideas in his head. You don't have to worry, it's not about fulfilling your duties as a husband. Rather, I'd like you to at least fulfill your duties as a father. What do you mean? You are in no way, shape or form interested in conceiving another child, so shouldn't you pay more attention to the one you have, even a little? Sabalion seemed confused. A small sigh escaped my lips. Earlier, when Blanche was hurt, your words to her were very cold. I called the doctor, didn't I? More importantly, you should have asked if she was all right. Sibelion's face did not show an ounce of guilt. What an unusual man. My initial assumption about his strange behavior was that Blanche was a daughter, not a son, but that didn't seem to be the case. After all, if he really wanted a son, he would have slept with Abigail long ago. Well, it's entirely possible that he didn't do it just because he didn't like Abigail, but even so, it's odd that he wasn't divorced or had a second wife or mistress to conceive a son. Or maybe, a Spartan education. His way of raising Blanche as a strong girl? Bullshit. Ignoring a girl and being tough on a girl are two very different things. She's your daughter. You should at least pretend you love her. Yes, you're right. That's my baby. Did he finally hear me? Despite my hopes, Sabalion's voice was as cold as the Arctic wind. It is mine, not yours. I will be the one to make the decisions regarding Blanche's upbringing. What did he say? That he was just referring to his child as an inanimate object. If the real Abigail had heard those words, she would have jumped up and danced for joy. Nothing could have made her happier than watching the deteriorating relationship between Sibelion and Blanche. But me, not that Abigail. I couldn't turn a blind eye to a child being so callously ignored. I gritted my teeth and rose quickly from my seat. It made the table shudder a little from the sudden movement and consequently spilled some tea. My name is Abigail Friedkin. Blanche, also a Friedkin. I suppose I have a right to interfere in her upbringing. I threw a look at him full of disgust and hatred. Sabalion didn't say anything. My request remains the same. Please love Princess Blanche as your daughter. Now I will sleep alone, at least something good. If you will excuse me. I hurriedly left the room. It is considered impolite to say goodbye to the king in this way, but I was angry. Again, Sabalion, he didn't say anything. Clara, are you sure you heard correctly? Has the queen really decided to sleep apart from the king? I heard it all, Miss Norma. The maids who served under Abigail whispered to each other in a muffled tone. A woman named Norma was very far from what anyone could call beautiful. She was rather tall, and she had a hawkish nose. Clara, too, looked like an average girl with brunette hair and a few freckles. Clara lowered her voice even more. In a furtive tone, she spoke. And what's most surprising, the queen, herself, suggested it. Of all the things she did, it's the craziest. What is she thinking? Rumors had been flying all over the palace for the past few days. The reason for all this was, of course, Queen Abigail. She was the main topic of conversation in the palace. After all, she had died and come back to life. And after she came to her senses, she continued to do one crazy thing after another. What do you mean? Aren't you the one who told me they were in a bad relationship from the beginning? Clara asked in confusion. Norma was biting her lower lip over her nervousness. It's not that simple, Clara. She's definitely up to something, mark my words. After all, the one we're talking about is Queen Abigail. Norma had worked for Abigail since the queen first came to the palace. In just 1 year of serving the queen, she could spend an entire week complaining about what she was going through. Their clothing spoke volumes. The queen roughly treated the attendants. Only the nobility could serve the royalty directly, so the servants usually dressed according to their noble status. But Norma and Clara wore only the usual maid's uniform. This is thanks to Abigail's obsession with beauty. You could expect to be immediately told off for looking even remotely beautiful. So, servants wore their gloomy uniforms to avoid her fury. Makeup and accessories, too, were forbidden. Do you really think anyone can change that easily? We'll just see. She'll go back to her old habits, scolding us like she always does. Just wait and you'll see. And be careful how you talk about the queen. I'll be fine. I'll be careful. Clara nodded, but still wasn't completely convinced. Norma just sighed. After Abigail's death, many of the servants were replaced by new ones. Poor Clara, being one of the new servants, did not know the true, terrible nature of Abigail. Before Norma could warn the girl, a bell rang from the room outside. Abigail, calling for a servant. Afraid of getting reprimanded for being a second late, they quickly walked out. But Abigail was already in a bad mood. They looked at the table in front of them with their lips pressed together. Shit, we're screwed. Norma cursed in her mind. She braced herself for another of Abigail's hysterical fits. I want to ask you something. Norma felt a chill run down her spine, and she tried to answer as politely as possible. Yes, Your Majesty. Which of these do you think fits Blanche best? Abigail pointed to a table on which stood two small pairs of shoes. One was a traditional black pair of Mary Jane-style shoes. The other pair was white, with a kitten-shaped heel and cute ribbons adorning them. Is this for Blanche? Norma assumed it was another conspiracy to drive the girl out. She was probably planning to put needles in or something like that. The problem was how to answer the queen's question. Should she say they were too reckless for someone like Blanche or? As Norma pondered how best to answer, Clara smiled warmly and said, I think both couples are very beautiful. Norma stared at Clara with absolute shock on her face. How could she come up with such a stupid answer? The queen would surely explode with rage. Really? I think both pairs would look adorable on her. Abigail very much lightened in the face, but then, her complexion immediately darkened. But what if she doesn't like it? Why don't you let the princess choose for herself which of these pairs she likes better? That might be a good option. Abigail plunged into deep thought. Meanwhile, Norma was still trying to recover from the shock. Was she really, seriously, contemplating what to get the princess? Especially when her face looked like she was thinking about killing someone. In the past, if Clara had spoken to Abigail like that, she would have just exploded with rage. Something had changed since she'd come back to life, but Norma continued to watch Abigail, with a strange expression on her face. She noticed that Abigail's violet eyes headed in Clara's direction. Abigail looked at her intently before she said, Clara. Yes, Your Majesty. You have a very pretty earring. Clara wore a blue earring. It was hidden under the maid's hair. Norma felt her heart drop to her stomach. Clara, you idiot. I told you that any accessories are forbidden. Abigail smiled as she said this to Clara. Norma's face contorted. It resembled a demon from hell. Clara realized her mistake as soon as she saw that smile. I'm so sorry. I swear I'll never wear earrings again. Clara turned visibly pale and tried to quickly remove the earring. She was in such a hurry that her ear began to bleed. Abigail jumped up from her seat and quickly grabbed the girl's hands. Clara, calm down. You're bleeding. Norma was at a loss. Abigail is wiping blood off a servant. And not even scolding her for the blood on the carpet. Right now, Abigail's face expressed only concern, and she spoke as if apologizing. I was just complimenting you on your pretty earring. You don't have to be so frightened. Really? Clara looked more shocked than Norma. Abigail spoke in a quiet tone, trying to reassure the girl. Of course. From now on, you may wear whatever you wish. Please tell the other servants about this as well. Yes, Your Majesty. Clara barely managed to utter an answer. Both maids were in shock. After Abigail was satisfied that the bleeding had stopped, she removed her handkerchief. The bleeding has stopped, but I recommend you see a doctor. Her face was hard, but not her voice. Clara was in a daze. The queen of the country, treating her so well. Abigail didn't even notice Clara's reaction and remained rather apologetic. She looked at Clara's bloody earring for a moment and walked over to the accessory table. Come to think of it, there are a couple of earrings I don't use. When Abigail opened her jewelry box, from inside, gems of all colors began to shine. Diamonds, garnets, emeralds, coral, pearls, sapphires. It looked like a small museum exhibit, as if all the jewels in the world could be found in that one box. Clara had some jewelry, too, since she was from a noble family, but this was on an entirely different level. Compared to that, Clara had just a ridiculous amount of jewelry. Abigail pulled a pair of sapphire earrings of the same shade of blue as Clara's earrings out of the box. Probably much more expensive, though. Here, I'll give you these. She cautiously held out her hand with the earrings. Clara waved her hands in despair. She didn't know what to do. No, I can't accept something like that. I'm not using them. And you'd be doing me a favor, since I was planning on getting rid of them anyway. Clara's vision floated as she listened to Abigail's words. Abigail took the opportunity to place the earrings in the girl's hands. Then she turned to look at Norma, who flinched in surprise. What's right for you, Norma? I don't need anything, Your Majesty. Your jewels will be wasted on me. No, they won't be wasted. I know you've suffered all this time because of me, so I want to give you an expensive gift, more than anyone else, Norma. I'm sorry for everything. The apology was as awkward as the gift itself. Norma was unable to say anything because Abigail took the green necklace and placed it in her hands. There was no word of thanks from the maidens, but neither did Abigail expect it to turn out this way. She simply put the jewelry box back where she had taken it and said, I'll be giving gifts to the other maids, too, so please don't get hung up on that, okay? Now, I want to take a little walk and get some fresh air. Abigail briskly left the room, after which it became completely silent. The maids were silent. Norma's mouth remained open with surprise, unable to tell if this was a dream or reality. She unconsciously muttered to herself, has she really changed? ******, it had been a week since I told the maids that they could wear whatever they wanted. Most of the maids seemed rather wary of the edict, but fortunately, after a few days things began to gradually change. Some of the maids even wore the accessories I gave them. Clara, in particular, was so excited that she wore something new every day. However, the sapphire earrings I gave her she never wore. But not everyone was like Clara. Some of the maids, including Norma, still refrained from wearing anything unusual. If it had been of their own volition, I wouldn't have had a problem with it, but unfortunately it seemed to be due to a distrust of me. Sigh. I guess with everything Abigail has done in the past, it's no wonder they don't trust me yet. Oh, Abigail, I have some serious work to do to make things right. I wouldn't be surprised if one of the maids tried to kill her. Speaking of which, who killed her anyway? Several people thought Abigail was a problem. First, supporters of the previous Queen Miriam. She was a child of the Stork family. After Miriam died, the Stork family offered Miriam's sister to be the next queen. But Abigail, the Cronenberg princess, was ultimately chosen as queen. Obviously, the Stork family would not treat Abigail well after this. There was another man I was a little wary of. Sablion's half-brother from another mother. I think this man's name was Raven. Like his name, his hair was as black as raven feathers. Even though he had a different mother, he was very similar to Sablion. However, his personality was completely different from Sablion's, so it was easy to tell them apart. Not to mention the fact that his hair was quite long, down to his shoulders. He had no personal animosity toward Abigail, but politically they must have been enemies. After all, if Abigail had a son, Raven's chances of becoming king would be further diminished. Apart from these people, all the others who were hostile to Abigail were a kind of bonus that arose because of her terrible treatment of people. She tortured many people, including her own servants in the castle. Abigail, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to figure out your killer? There were too many potential suspects. So the first thing to do is to reduce the number of my enemies. I can't die like in the original tale. Also, I must improve my relationship with Blanche. Blanche will be trying on her new dresses today, right? Yes, Your Majesty. Do you think if I were present, would she find my presence undesirable? Today is the day Blanche will be trying on her new dresses. I really wanted to go, but I hesitated, thinking that Blanche was still afraid of me. I think it's going to be okay. Clara's reassurance gave me courage. At least I could use the gift as an excuse to stop by. That's all right, then. In that case, can you help me get dressed? Yes. Clara and Norma had brought shoe boxes with them. They were the same pairs of shoes that I had discussed last time with the maids. Along with the maids, I walked toward the guest room. As I approached, I began to hear the animated voices of people coming from the room. Before I went in, I looked inside. I could see Blanche sitting in a chair. Seeing her sitting motionless, with her tiny hands neatly placed on her knees, she resembled a small, porcelain doll. Even from this distance, she looked the cutest. From her tiny nose, to her mouth, to her ears, and even her rosy cheeks. If I poked her cheek with my finger, I think it would bounce off her firm cheek. The room was filled with several large boxes and several mannequins. Several different types of dresses hung from each of them. As the seasons changed from winter to spring, the dresses were warm and bright. However, they were all designed for adults. "Miss Jeremy, what do you think of this dress?" A voice came from a man in a rather bright suit. He seemed to be a designer. A lady named Jeremy looked intently at the selection of dresses. "I heard that Miss Jeremy was Blanche's nanny and her teacher. She had served Blanche since the princess was a baby. And if I remember correctly, she was a cousin of the Duke of Stork. With the support of her family, she was not one to be trifled with. Other than that, I didn't know much about her." To begin with, Abigail had not spoken to this woman in a long time. The first and last time they met was when Abigail first entered the palace. Miss Jeremy tried to talk to Abigail about Blanche's education, but Abigail interrupted her and said, "It's too annoying, so I'll leave the princess to you. And in the future, don't come to me about princess business." Sigh. "Abigail, why have you been acting this way with people? I will have to give Miss Jeremy a gift as an apology." As I stood there, flying in my thoughts, Miss Jeremy went through one dress after another, her eyes wandering over them. They were just like a hawk's. "Do you have any other dresses besides these?" Presently, she looked at the reddish-brown dress. It looked chic and elegant, but I didn't like it. In fact, none of those dresses looked appropriate. Children's clothing is a world apart from adult clothing. The clothes provided by the designer are only appropriate for adults. They probably planned to simply adapt the dresses to fit Blanche. Among these dresses, there were none that were comfortable for a child. My desire to create clothes for Blanche flared up even more. I wanted to run into the room and stop them, but I needed to be patient. Instead, I decided to take this opportunity to see what kind of clothes Blanche liked, so I could make them for her later. Meanwhile, the designer pulled another dress out of the box. "What do you think of this dress?" It was a light blue dress with white ribbons all over it. Would Blanche like this style? I looked at Blanche to see her reaction. Her eyes sparkled like stars. Blanche lavished the dress, with many excited looks. Her pretty little legs swayed on the chair in anticipation. Oh, God, her legs can't even reach the floor because they are so small. This is so adorable. Thank goodness she found a dress she likes. While I was busy admiring Blanche, Miss Jeremy said, "Show me something else. This dress is pretty popular these days." The designer pulled out another dress. The moment I saw this dress, I put my hand over my mouth. I was shocked. This dress was too modern for this time. Even by modern standards, the design looked pretty bold. To think that I would see something like that in this era. The dress had many different colors of silk: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and purple. The design looked like it was meant to resemble a rainbow. In addition to the bright color combination, the shape of the dress itself was completely unique. The puffs on the shoulders were big enough to hide watermelons inside them, and there was a huge amount of fur on the neckline, enough to look like a lion's mane. The designer said this dress was in vogue now, but I think he just came here to get rid of his unsaleable junk. Miss Jeremy replied, "I think this dress looks good." What? I almost burst into the room in a fit of rage. Was she really thinking of making Blanche wear something so awful? Blanche would be beautiful even in such squalor. Yes, Blanche was charming no matter what she wore. Perhaps Miss Jeremy knew that, and that was the reason she chose that dress. Or maybe Blanche was in love with the rainbow. Tastes can vary greatly from person to person. I looked at Blanche's reaction. Her legs had completely stopped moving. Her once happy face, distorted with horror. She reminded me of a puppy I'd fostered in the past. He used to have that face when I took him to the vet after I told him we were going for a walk. Blanche looked just like that puppy now. That face made my heart race. "Blanche, you don't like that dress." Blanche looked at the dress for a moment before saying, "Miss Jeremy. Is something wrong, princess?" Miss Jeremy smiled, but her smile seemed rather stern. Blanche flinched as she looked at Miss Jeremy's face. No, nothing." Miss Jeremy smiled one more time at Blanche before she spoke to the designer again. That was strange. Had Miss Jeremy really been so clueless to Blanche all this time? The woman began choosing more and more dresses without giving Blanche's opinion a second thought. I want to pick out dresses for Blanche, too. I wonder which dresses would look good on Blanche? And what style of dress does she like? Blanche said nothing more as Miss Jeremy continued to pick out dresses. All she did was look at the rainbow dress and then at Miss Jeremy. Did she leave the choice of dresses up to Miss Jeremy because she didn't want to choose them herself? No, that didn't seem to be the case. She looked extremely shocked when she saw the rainbow dress, but periodically when the designer pulled out other, new dresses, her eyes lit up. The designer pulled out his latest dress. I didn't miss how much Blanche's eyes sparkled at that moment. It was a bright pink dress, cute rather than pretty. It had flower patterns embroidered all over it. This dress was really in keeping with the season. The designer smiled brightly. This dress is very popular right now, too. What do you think, Miss Jeremy? Miss Jeremy glanced furtively at the dress, then brushed it off. A dress like that wouldn't fit a princess. We'll go on with the dresses I picked out earlier. Got it. Then I'll put the extra dresses away. The designer had to take care of stacking the unselected dresses back into the boxes. Blanche, looking at the floor depressed. And no. My poor little Blanche. Her precious dresses will be. I couldn't just stand there and watch. If the designer leaves now, Blanche will look like a clown all spring. I knocked lightly a few times, then immediately entered the room. The people inside bowed with surprised expressions on their faces. Welcome, Your Majesty. Welcome, Lady Abigail. Blanche jumped down from her seat to greet me. Her head was so small and round. She looked so much like a pussycat that I almost started stroking her without even realizing it. Oh, patience, patience. I tore my gaze away from Blanche to look at Miss Jeremy. I heard about the designer's arrival. How's the spring dress selection going for Blanche? Yes. We've just finished picking out the dresses, Your Majesty, Miss Jeremy replied politely. I looked at the designer. He looked rather pale. I turned to look at myself in the reflection of the window next to me. Wow, that's a face worthy of an R grade. I looked so intimidating, with that menacing look. I'd really like to see the dresses you picked out. Yes, of course, Your Majesty. The designer summoned someone to show all the dresses again. About a dozen dresses were chosen, but Blanche didn't really seem to want any of the ones Miss Jeremy had chosen for her. I looked at the dresses before I turned my head toward Blanche. Blanche sat motionless, like a little doll. Blanche, are there any dresses you like? I tried to look as kindly as possible. Blanche clumsily replied to me, I like everybody. I see. Blanche didn't seem to want to answer honestly in front of everyone. I walked over to the other box and opened it. I know I saw the designer put the pink dress here. I sensed that Miss Jeremy was quite disturbed by my actions, but I had no other choice. She may be Blanche's nanny, but I am her stepmother. I have a right to interfere. I have to say, that dress looks pretty nice. What do you think, Princess Blanche? I picked up the pink dress and held it up to Blanche. Blanche looked a little shocked, but after a moment she managed to nod a few times to me. Yes, yes. It's quite beautiful. Then we choose it. I also remembered that she looked happy when she saw that sky blue dress the designer had shown at the beginning. I rummaged through the other box to find it. And that dress, Blanche. Yes, it's beautiful. Life returned to Blanche's blue eyes, and they sparkled like a pond in the morning dawn. Okay, fine. Let's find some more of those dresses you liked. A good princess who answers honestly should be rewarded. I'm sure she liked more than these two. The difficulty was that I didn't remember the others at all. But that's no problem. You see, I'm the queen of this country. Just like in the story of the honest lumberjack, people who answer honestly are rewarded. I turned to the designer. Bring me all the dresses that fit Blanche. I'll pay for all of them. The moment I said this, the whole room fell into silence. No one seemed to believe what I was saying. Even the maids were surprised. Only the designer looked extremely happy. The person who broke the silence was Miss Jeremy. She spoke to me with a smile on her face. Your Majesty, I may be overstepping my bounds, but the princess's budget doesn't allow us to buy all the dresses she wants. That's why I said I would pay for everything myself, meaning using my budget, so there shouldn't be any problem. I might just skip buying my own spring dresses for this year. Either way, I don't need them anymore. Abigail was a big proponent of spending money, so her closets were filled to the brim with shoes and clothes. Miss Jeremy said nothing more, though she looked extremely surprised. And then I felt someone tugging lightly on my dress. When I looked down, I saw Blanche standing right next to me. She was looking at me with despair on her face. Lady Abigail. It's okay. I don't want you to miss buying clothes because of me. Was it out of fear of Abigail? Looking into her eyes, I knew it wasn't. She genuinely felt sorry for me. I could feel it in her gaze. My heart tingled. Is this child an angel? I crouched down to Blanche's eye level, trying my best not to smile. It's okay, Blanche. I wasn't planning on buying anything, because I already have plenty of clothes. But Blanche was very upset. She didn't need to feel sorry for me. I tried to speak as kindly as I could. Could you do one thing for me? Yes, of course. This child looked ready to do something for me. Her fists were even clenched and there was eagerness in her eyes. Pick something you really like and show it to me. I want you to show me your favorite dress. That way I can see what kind of dresses Blanche prefers. She seemed rather confused by my request. Is that all? Yes, that's enough. In fact, it was more than enough. The sight of Blanche in her beautiful clothes made my heart beat faster. Oh, Blanche, it almost slipped my mind. I came here to give you this gift. I handed her 2 shoe boxes. When I saw that Blanche was hesitant to accept the gift, I whispered in her ear, "Show me your favorite dress, and put these shoes on." I put the shoes on the table and looked back at the people in the room. Miss Jeremy seemed as if she had just seen a ghost. Now I'm going to go. I'll see you next time. I left the room, leaving a confused Blanche behind me. The moment I left, I sighed heavily. I thought my heart was going to explode. I had never done anything like that before. My hands were shaking, but I managed to help Blanche, so all's well that ends well. I calmed my heart for a moment in the hallway, but then, I heard someone's voice behind me. Wait, Lady Abigail. The moment I turned back, I saw Blanche. She was running toward me. Her shoulders went up and down. Yes, Blanche? Is something wrong? Blanche paused for a moment before she stuck her foot out from under my dress. Her shoes shone in the sun. Lace socks and Mary Jane shoes complemented each other perfectly. She was already wearing the shoes I had given her. Her feet were so tiny, it made the shoes look like they were made for a doll. I really thought they would look good, but it was just gorgeous. You said you wanted to see me put them on, so. Blanche picked up the words, her face red with embarrassment, but she still managed to smile as she looked at me. I fell in love with them. Thank you so much. Blanche's bright, smiling face was very beautiful. I'd never seen her smile like that before. If smiles had the right temperature, hers would probably be like the warmth of spring. A smile that would make the flowers bloom from the hearts of those who saw her. To think that it would make Blanche so happy. Even Norma had a motherly smile on her face. Then, at that moment, someone shouted down the hall, "Princess Blanche. We're not done yet." It was Miss Jeremy. Startled by the surprise, Blanche immediately lost her composure and looked around sharply. "I think I have to go." "Sure, you can go. I'll see you next time." Blanche made a neat, though slightly flustered bow and headed back to the guest room. Looking at the way her feet slid across the floor, one could imagine flowers blooming from beneath her feet. Oh, that's nice. Seeing Blanche so happy makes me happy, too. So sweet, so sweet. Even after I got back to my room, I couldn't help but smile. Curiously, Clara and Norma looked at me bewildered as I tried to control myself. "Lady Abigail, should I call a doctor?" "You don't look very well," Clara said. "Do I not look good?" "What do you mean? I'm just happy." Just as I thought, this face does bring with it a lot of confusion. "I'm fine. I want to get some rest, so you can go. Don't come back until I call for you." "Yes, Your Majesty." The maids quickly left the room. As soon as I heard the door click behind them, I jumped right onto the bed. Blanche, so cute. How does she manage to look so cute? I want to make clothes for her. I want her to wear clothes that I made. I wanted to call in a designer and have him work on creating several dresses at once. But I had a problem. For one thing, it was too early to give something like this to Blanche. I have no idea what kind of clothes she likes. I don't want to make just beautiful clothes for her. I want to make beautiful clothes that Blanche would actually like. Seeing how she couldn't refuse Miss Jeremy's suggestions, I realized if I gave her a dress now, she would wear it no matter how she felt. And she would surely wear that rainbow dress if I gave it to her. That's why I needed to improve my relationship with her first, so she could honestly say no to me. I clenched my hands into fists and braced myself. I could do a whole fashion show for Blanche someday. But first, I need to become best friends with her. The late spring sun was quite warm. Sabalion stood next to the sunny windowsill and gazed at the building across the street, the library building where Abigail was currently living. Abigail was alone in the hallway and didn't seem to realize she was being watched. No, she was too busy watching someone herself to begin with. When he turned his head to follow the woman's gaze, he found Blanche walking in the garden. The young princess was walking along the garden path. She was wearing a pink dress. The girl was just strolling along, but Abigail watched her for nearly 30 minutes. It was not the first time he had witnessed such behavior. Abigail does it whenever Blanche appears near her. Is this woman trying to spy on Blanche? What is she planning? Sabalion subconsciously bit his lip. The last time they had spoken to each other, Abigail had demanded that he spend more time looking out for Blanche. She sounded almost like a different person. Some people thought Abigail had really changed, but Sabalion didn't believe it for a minute. Abigail really hated Blanche. She stared at Blanche in the magic mirror for a long time, and then spent several minutes punching the wall with her fists in a rage, sinking into her thoughts. Is this how this woman let out her murderous feelings? At that moment Abigail turned her face so that Sabalion could catch the expression on her face. It was impossible to miss the woman's wicked, venomous smile. Perhaps this was what the devil from hell would look like if he smiled. Sabalion's grey-blue eyes turned cold when he saw her face. She seemed to hate Blanche after all. He really couldn't understand what was going on in Abigail's mind. Abigail was jealous of Sabelion's previous wife. However, hating the dead was not enough, and she directed her hatred toward the living. She even yelled at Sabalion once, asking if he would want to have a child with her if Blanche were no longer there. There is no woman who can change so easily. While he was pondering all this, Blanche had already finished her walk. Just then, Abigail began to move. She seemed to have some kind of box in her hands. A box large enough to hold a human head. Sabalion's eyebrows twitched when he saw the box. Abigail was going to do something. He could sense it. What exactly were the thoughts in this woman's mind to manifest such a wicked smile? Abigail moved quietly, no maids beside her. Looking at the direction of the woman's movement, Sabalion stood up. *****millimeter. I think now would be a good time to show Blanche. I was hiding behind a wall with a box in my hands. I could see Blanche from here. Throughout this week I have been listening to rumors about Blanche and observing her myself. I also did an analysis of my thoughts on what she might like. She recently got new dresses, and I also recently gave her a pair of shoes. Accessories are not worn at her age. She doesn't really seem to want to use them either. After much thought, I managed to come up with the perfect gift. Blanche should like it, too. The problem now, however, was how to present it. I thought about giving it to her as she strolled along, but I didn't want to bother her with my obsession. If I acted as if I had met her by coincidence, and gave her this box, then Blanche would be, no, that would make me look like. I decided to think of it all from Blanche's point of view. To Blanche, I was something of an annoying boss from work. How would I feel if my boss showed up out of nowhere during my day off? I felt a chill run down my spine. No, I should just leave before Blanche notices me. Maybe I should just leave the present in front of her door. I wanted to see her face when she opened it, but now I thought that just leaving would be the best option. I put the box on the floor, feeling frustrated. At that moment I felt someone come up behind me. Is Blanche back yet? I turned around and saw Sabalion standing in front of me. That's not Blanche. What is he doing here? I hadn't seen him since the day we decided to use separate bedrooms. We also ate separately, so there was no reason for us to see each other. Still, I should at least greet him occasionally. I bowed quickly to him. I hope you are well, Your Majesty. What are you doing here, Queen? All I got was a cold question in response. Sabalion's voice sounded even sterner today than before. I flinched for a split second, but I decided to try to be a little more sincere than usual. I was going to give Princess Blanche a present, and I was going to leave it here. A present. He still looked very suspicious of me. He looked at me as if I were a terrorist. Yes, a gift. Give it to me. Sabalion held out his hand to me. Give it to him? When I wrapped it with a nice, pink ribbon for Blanche. But he didn't seem to back down if I said no. Well, whatever. I could always redo the ribbon again. I hid my irritation and handed him the box. Sabalion quickly untied the ribbon with his hands. Wait, that's my precious gift for Blanche. Why is he unwrapping it? Soon the man finished unpacking, and the gift was in his hands. This. A doll, obviously. It was a cute doll, similar to Blanche. The clothes for this doll, Abigail made herself. It had the same design as the pink dress that Blanche had looked at with joy, and a twinkle in her eye earlier. I wanted her and the doll to have matching outfits. Blanche would look very cute hugging a doll in the same clothes she was wearing. Sabalion couldn't stop staring at the doll. Does he think I actually hid a bomb in it? Please give it to Blah. As soon as I said that, he drew his sword. A long sword appeared in front of my face. What the hell is he doing? I took an involuntary step back. Hey, what the hell are you doing? What happened? Why did he need a sword? He was the one who killed me earlier. The doll fell to the floor as I tried to regain my composure. And Sableyon's sword plunged right into her. He stabbed her, right in the stomach area. I looked at Sabellion stunned. What? Why? His sword split the sweet doll's tummy in two. The dress I'd made was cut in half and white cotton fell out of her tummy. He grabbed the doll off the floor and started pulling out all of its insides. In an instant, the doll was transformed into something strange. The floor was covered with cotton, and pink scraps of fabric were scattered everywhere, like dying flower petals. He tore the doll open as best he could to check its contents, and after he did so, he threw what was left of it in his hand to the floor. It was really just a doll, Sabelion muttered quietly. Only when I heard him speak did I come back to reality. What? Sabelion turned his head when he heard my voice. He seemed very surprised. What did you just do, Your Majesty? I couldn't stop my anger. I was in such a rage, it was unimaginable. What I had spent hours working on as a gift, he tore apart in a matter of seconds. I had to watch as Blanche's gift turned into a piece of garbage. More than anything, however, it was Sabellion's face that pissed me off. He just looked surprised. There wasn't even a hint of guilt on his face. Of course he must be suspicious of me, because Abigail had insulted Blanche in the past. There was nothing I could do about his suspicions. In his opinion, I might have tampered with the doll and hurt Blanche. But was it really necessary to resort to this? I tried to hold back the impending waves of tears, but I couldn't stop myself. At that moment, I noticed a change in Sabelion's face. Of course, he didn't look sympathetic or guilty. Rather, he looked as if he'd just seen a ghost. I didn't even want to look at him. I wanted nothing more than to run away, but there was something I had to do first. I squatted down and started picking up the doll, which had turned into a pile of garbage. I felt humiliated. It was trash that needed to be thrown away, but I couldn't bear to see my hard work, as a gift for Blanche, scattered all over the floor, just like that. I did it for Blanche. I did it so I could see her happy face, and yet, right then, as my fingers trembled with a mixture of shame and rage, I heard a voice behind me. Lady Abigail? Father.